Hi everyone. I wanted to take a little bit of time and create this quick video and discuss a topic that wasn't covered in the other ceiling videos, and that is how to create a ceiling with a slope. With this project for your late term project, you're going to have to create some ceilings that have a slope that mirror the slope of the roof, and the ceiling will really be attached to the underside of the roof. And so I want to show you how to do that. Okay. I also want to show you how to view your model differently and just give you a few little hints and tips on how to be able to model a little bit better and function in your Revit environment. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is in your project browser, and I just want to make it clear and help you navigate the project browser a little bit here. I want you to notice that you have an area here called floor plans, and you also have an area here called ceiling plans. When you are working in a ceiling plan, I want you to make sure that you are actually working in a ceiling plan. And when you're working in a floor plan, I want you to actually make sure that you're working in a floor plan, okay? And I know that might be silly to say here, but a very common mistake of students that are new to Revit is that they think that they're working in the main level floor plan here, and in actuality, they're working in a ceiling plan that has the name main level, okay? So, because things here are named very similarly to things here, just pay attention to what you're working in. One way that I help navigate that is that if I'm working in a floor plan type view, I will close up that little ceiling plan area so that I don't accidentally, click on something in the ceiling plan section. I make sure that I, will click here. Okay. And if I'm working in a ceiling plan, I'll close up the floor plan area and I'll open up the ceiling plan. And that way I know for sure that I'm, working in a ceiling plan as opposed to a floor plan. Okay. So that's my first little bit of advice is, make sure that you're actually working where you need to be working. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to create some ceilings and they're going to be sloped. And I'm going to show you two different ways of going about that. Now, before I show you how to create your sloped ceilings, I want to show you a way to view your model a little bit better to help you create these ceilings, okay? And this technique that I'm going to show you, it's not something that's really limited to ceilings. You can do it with when you're modeling really anything in Revit, okay? So I'm going to switch to a 3D view up here, okay? And I'm going to tile my windows here. So I'm going to type WT on the keyboard. Okay, so now I can view two different views at the same time on the same screen. Okay, let me do that again. I'm going to close my main level. That untiles my views. I'm going to double click on my main level reflected ceiling plan, or RCP, and I'm going to type WT on the keyboard, and it tiles those windows. So now I can come over here and I can move around. I can click over here and I can move around, okay? And what I like about this workflow, this split screen, is that when I do something over here, I can look at it in 3D at the same time I'm working in 2D, right? So it just really helps me be able to view things nicely. Now, this model is a really great example and it has a ton of stuff in it. But really don't worry about that stuff right now, okay? We're just going to worry about the ceilings. So I'm going to engage my 3D view over here, and I want you to notice that you have kind of this 3D box over here that is showing in my 3D view. And what that is it's called a section box, okay? And my section box, the option to show it is in my properties dialog box, and I can uncheck that, and you'll see that it goes away over here. Or I can check it again and it turns back on, okay? Now, what this section box does is it allows you to view the model in kind of a really dynamic sectional view. So you'll notice that we have these grips, on the sides and on the top and actually on the bottom as well. And if I click and hold that grip and I move it towards the model and I let go when I get kind of close, I actually need to be a little closer. I'm just pushing it into my architecture here, push it a little bit more. I'm going to pull it back out a little. I want to cut my bathrooms here. So let's see if I can get a really good view there. What you're going to notice is happening is that the project is kind of being cut, right? So I'm able to see into this model. And I'm just doing it a little bit of a time at a time so that I can kind of get to where I want to be, which is I want to be able to see these ceilings in this bathroom. Okay, so you see that now I'm viewing the model in kind of a dynamic sectional view, right? It's being cut vertically and I can see into it. I can also take this top down if I want, click and hold, drag it down, right? And now I went all the way down to the basement. I can drag it back up just a little bit. And there's my first level, my main level. Okay, so now I just, I can zoom in there and I can orbit about, right? And I can look and see what's going on. Okay. Again, this model is very complete and we will get there, but we're just not there quite yet. Okay. I'm going to pull my section view up here just a little bit so that we can see the roof. But one thing I want to make clear is that this is just a different way of viewing the model. I'm not actually cutting it or changing it or, taking a piece off and deleting it when I'm doing this. I'm really just allowed to view into the model with this section box, okay? And I can turn it back off if I need to over here. And when I turn it off, it resets and I can turn it back on and, manipulate it. So what I want to do here is I want to look into the bathrooms, and I want to look in the bathrooms because I'm going to be showing you how to create a sloped ceiling in the bathrooms. And so we're gonna view it. We're gonna view the bathrooms in this 3D area. I'm clicked over here and I've engaged this view, and I'm going to click on one of those ceilings. Okay, now here's the beauty of the view that I'm using. I can click here and you see that I also highlight the object over here. I can click here, right, and that object is highlighted. Okay, so one other thing I want to show you here is, this view is in a hidden line view, which means it's black and white, and it's not completely see-through like a wireframe view, but it's a little bit hard to kind of see things here. Everything's the same tone, and while I do see some hatch patterns, I kind of like to come down here to my visual settings and my visual styles. I'm going to click down here and I'm going to choose shaded. Okay, and I'm going to get some color going in just this 3D model so that my eye can differentiate the different things that I'm viewing. Okay, so I can type SD and I go to a shaded view as well on the keyboard. I can type HL and it goes back to hidden line, or SD to go back to shaded view. Okay, so I turn this to a shaded view so that I can see things a little bit better. Now I come back over here to my main level reflected ceiling plan, and I'm going to click to initiate this window. Okay, and I'm going to talk about how we can create some of these sloped ceilings. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is select one of these ceilings, and I click, and oh shoot, I can't really select that ceiling, right? The best way to select things that are kind of plane based, like a ceiling or a floor or a roof, is really to kind of migrate over to the edge, right? So an edge boundary here, or the edge over here, or kind of over here. And I'm going to tab select to get what I want selected, okay? So I'm going to hover over the boundary. I'm going to tab. I picked walls. Tab again. Tab. And you'll notice that right next to my cursor it says ceiling, and you'll also notice down in the bottom left-hand corner it says compound ceiling. So I know that right now if I click, then I'm going to select the ceiling. Okay, I'm going to hit on edit boundary, or I could have double-clicked on this ceiling, but I'm going to click edit boundary. And now you see that we're bumped into sketch mode, and I can see the boundary of my ceiling here. Okay. So this ceiling has an outline, of course, and it has here something that we haven't talked about yet, and this is called a slope arrow. Okay, this is one way that we can create a sloped ceiling, and there's also a second way that I'll go over in a minute. Okay, so I just wanted to show you the slope arrow, and now I want to show you how to create that sloped arrow. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to hit delete. Okay, so when you're creating your ceilings, kind of the steps we'll go through, you will, pick the ceiling type you want to use. You will come over to architecture. You'll click on the ceiling tool. You'll choose the sketch or the auto ceiling. Okay. You will be bumped into this screen. You can choose the tool you want to use to draw the boundary of the ceiling, right? Which is what I see here, the boundary of the ceiling. And once you've done that, right, normally we'll just hit finish and we have a ceiling. Well, great. What you're going to see over here is that ceiling is flat, right? And this roof is sloped. And so we want to have a ceiling with a slope, okay? So that the additional step that we will take to create a sloped ceiling is, number one, we can add a sloped arrow into our ceiling. Or number two, we can click on one of these boundary lines here and we can choose to define a slope, just like we would with a roof, okay? How do we decide which technique we're going to use? Well, using the slope arrow, you need to input some pretty specific information when you use the slope arrow, okay? So if you, for example, know that you want to slope your ceiling from here to here, and you want it to start at, 0 inches and slope up, 5 inches, okay? A slope arrow will allow you to input that 6-inch rise in slope. Okay, so it's very precise. So if you have an exact measurement, you know how many inches you want to rise, you know where you want it to start and stop, the slope arrow is great for you. Okay, if you just know that this roof slopes 1 to 12 and you don't know where it starts or stops, but you know it slopes 1 inch to 12 inches, then clicking one of your lines and choosing to define that with slope will be a better option for you. Okay, so that will allow you a consistent slope without having to input, inches or heights or anything like that. Okay, so that's kind of the difference between the two. I'm just going to hit cancel here real quick, and I'm going to kind of start this ceiling over so that we can start from the beginning and we can create a sloped roof. So I'm going to tab, click, and I'm going to hit delete. And now you'll notice that our ceiling is gone, okay? So I'm going to create one ceiling using the slope arrow and one ceiling using the line definition. We'll call it that. So I'm going to go to architecture. I'm going to click on our ceiling tool, and I'm going to choose sketch ceiling. I'm going to pick the type of ceiling I want to generate, okay? I'm going to use my boundary line, and I'm going to outline my ceiling. There we go. And now to generate a ceiling using the slope arrow, I would click on the slope arrow, okay? And a slope arrow has what we call a tail and a head, all right? So if I click, the first point that I click will be where the tail rests, okay? And then the head will move in the direction that we're sloping up, okay? So you really want your tail to start at one boundary and move to a second boundary on the ceiling. So I'm going to click, and I've just placed my slope arrow. It's sloping up, and this is the tail, and this is the arrowhead or the head. Okay. If I click on that slope arrow, you'll see that I have a lot of information to specify. Just like I said, it's very specific here. So I can specify the height at the tail. Well, I want it to be assigned to the main level, but I want it to be 8 feet above the main level. And then the level at the head, I want it to be assigned to main level, and I want it to height offset 9 feet. Enter. Okay, so essentially what that means is that this ceiling is going to slope, and it's going to start at 8 feet above the main level, and it's going to slope up to 9 feet above the main level. So if I hit finish right now, there you go. Okay, we have a ceiling that slopes from this wall to that wall, right? From this wall to that wall. It slopes up, and it starts at 8 feet above the main level, and it goes to 9 feet above the main level. Great. Okay, so all of that is, fine and dandy if you have kind of that input, right, that you want to put in there. But usually I don't really have that specific of an input when I'm just creating a slope ceiling. Usually it's mimicking another element, right? An element like this roof. Okay, so I'm going to delete this ceiling again, delete, and I'm going to create another ceiling, and it's going to just be a 112 slope. Okay, so I'm going to now click on ceiling. Oop, I need to come over here and click and initiate my reflected ceiling plan. I can't draw my ceiling over here. So I click on ceiling, sketch my ceiling, and you will always see me choose sketch ceiling instead of auto ceiling. And that's because I feel like I have more control over actually the boundary that's created. When you first start doing Revit, the auto ceiling is magic, and it's like, wow, I can just create 50 different ceilings in 2 minutes. But it just doesn't give me the control I like. Okay. All right, so I just generated my boundary, and instead of using the slope arrow, I'm just going to hit escape. I'm going to click on this line here, and I'm going to choose and check the define slope. Click. Okay. And I'm just going to do 1 because I want it to start and slope up and just kind of proceed at a 112 slope until it hits here, and then it's going to stop, right? If I did 2 of these, it would end up being a gable roof. This would slope up, this would slope up till they meet, and we'd get like a, upside down V-shaped ceiling, and we don't want that. So I click on that to make sure it defines slope, and I choose 112 here, or I can type in 1, enter, or I could click on this and type 1, enter, and I get a 112 slope. Okay, I'm choosing a 112 slope, not arbitrarily, but because this roof actually is a 112 roof. So once I've defined that and I've made sure I have my ceiling type selected, I hit finish, and my lovely little bathroom ceiling is at a 112 slope. Okay, although now that ceiling is kind of too low, right? So I look at my roof here as it's selected, and I see that it is assigned to the main level, but it's offset from its level 8'4". I could, kind of guess and say, well, maybe it needs to be 8'10". Enter. That thing bumps up a little. I want essentially this edge of, the top edge of that gypsum board to line up with that. Okay. So there's 2 ways I could do that. I could I could create a little section over here, and I could measure from here to here using the measure tool. I can't do that in a 3D view, but I can in a sectional view. Or I could just use the align command, and I could align my ceiling to that roof plane. Okay. But I do in fact want to create a little section that I'm going to use to view something, and then I'm going to delete it because I think this is a technique that you'll all want to get used to doing. Okay, so I have my 3D view open. I have my main level reflected ceiling plan open. I'm going to open up my floor plan view of the main level. Click, click. And I'm going to place a section that goes through this bathroom here. And I'm doing it on the main level floor plan because the sections, they will originally show up in the main level floor plans. Okay. And I'm creating this section, and you'll see me do it, and it's going to be a disposable section, okay? And this is something that will be very helpful for you in Revit, to know that you could come up here to this little quick access section tool, click, and I can click, click, run a section through those bathroom walls, right? Click, click. I can create a section of that area, and I can view what I need to view, and when I'm finished I can delete it, right? How great is that? I can create a view, look at something, and then delete it. Okay, if I create a section, I don't have to keep it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the measure tool now. It's available. Click. I'm going to click at the bottom of that room. I'm going to click at the very top of that room where it meets the ceiling. Click. And I see that I have a ceiling height of 9'6.5". Okay. So really I'm going to hit escape, click on that ceiling. Okay. And I'm going to change this to 9'6 1/2 inch. Enter. And that ceiling just pops right up into place. Oh, shoot, except that it went above where it should be, right? This line should be in line with that. So I'm actually, instead of 9'6.5", 9'6", enter. Okay. All of you AutoCAD users are probably panicking, or, you know, even because you're new at Revit, you're probably panicking, thinking, oh, you're moving things, you're changing things. But, you know, Revit is really kind of versatile like that. I can create something, I can generally get it in the right place, and then once it's placed, I have to revise it and I have to move it into the spot where it is going to, you know, rest finally. Okay. I had to get used to that when I started using Revit, the idea that you create something and you revise it to make it perfect, right? Because using AutoCAD, you usually want to create something perfect the first time, right? We don't want to rework things. So I just moved my ceiling into place. I feel like this is a much easier way of going about, you know, creating a sloped ceiling. I'm just going to hit undo here. So Control Z, and I'm going to put that ceiling down a little below where it was, okay? So the second way we could have aligned this ceiling with the roof plane is using the align command. It's AL on the keyboard, or I can go to modify and choose align, click, okay, and I could have chosen that roof plane, click, and then aligned the ceiling to it, click. And there was no measuring, there was no moving, there was no pressing buttons and hitting apply. There was just AL, click, click, and it was done. Okay. I can come down here and turn on my shaded view, and I can see things just a little bit better, right? But in essence, I just kind of moved my little slope ceiling to where it needed to be. Okay. I'm going to close out section here, this section I generated. And now that I have done what I needed to do, I can click on that section and hit delete on the keyboard, and I can hit OK and it goes away. Okay. So I used that section view just to see what I needed to see, and then I got rid of it because it wasn't a view that I wanted to keep. Okay. So now when I look at my 3D view over here, and I'm just kind of orbiting around, right? I have my cute little ceilings back in there, and they work wonderfully. And that's how you're going to generate your ceilings for your next assignment. Okay. I am going to go back to the main level reflected ceiling plan. We're going to close that out. And essentially what you're going to do is you're just going to create a bunch of different little ceilings in here. There will be one ceiling for this room. Oop, there's one, right? You'll have one in here, one in here, one in here. You'll have one in here, here, here. This area has one big ceiling though, because it's kind of all one connected room, right? But I guess I'm pointing this out because each of these different areas has a separate ceiling associated with it, right? They're all sloped. They are all up against the roof plane. This area, this big area, is the only one that has kind of a large, let's see if I can get that ceiling selected. Need to move. There we go. This is really the only area that kind of has one big ceiling associated with it, right? But you will also see that it slopes like this, okay? And if you're wondering, I don't know which way it slopes. Does it slope up? Does it slope down? Okay. One way of kind of figuring that out will be to, number one, you can create a section, right? If you're wondering, you drew the ceiling and then you think, oh shoot, does it slope low here, high here, or low here, high here? Create a little section, draw through there. Oh, it's not going to show up in my reflected ceiling plan. So I'm going to go to my main level floor plan here real quick. And there's that lovely little trash section. But you can see over here, you can say, oh, it's low at the kitchen and it's high at the chimney. Okay. And you can come back in, you can delete that section, delete, enter, go back here, and you can, you know, create your ceiling as needed. Okay. But don't forget that you can use icons to initiate commands. You can come down here and change how you are viewing things, right? And when you're done, you can change it back. You can change the scale of your drawings here, right? There's an 1/8 inch drawing. We can change that back to, I don't remember what it was, 3/16 maybe. Okay. Maybe it was 1/4. but we can change the scale of our ceiling here. We can view things that are turned off. Click, click, right? One other thing that is completely unrelated to ceilings, but I do want to point out, is that, number one, you can use the icons to initiate commands. Number two, you can use keyboard shortcuts. But number three, I had one person ask me, oh, I'm so tired of coming up here and clicking on architecture and then clicking on wall and then going through, this menu to find what I want to find. And I totally agree with you. It's a pain in the neck. My biggest complaint with Revit is the menus, right? You're wasting time having to go through that process every time you want to draw something, okay? But I do want to introduce you to a tool. It's called Create Similar, okay? And it only appears when I click on something. But the idea behind Create Similar is that I don't want to, when I draw a wall, I don't want to type WA, come up here, find my wall, click over here and then start drawing. I just want to be able to mimic this object, okay? So if I click on it and I choose Create Similar, which is this icon, okay, I will click and it will allow me to draw an identical item without going through the menu system, right? So I can click here, Create Similar, or CS on the keyboard, click, click, escape, okay? So that will work with anything, components, roofs, ceilings, walls, anything. You'll see me use that a lot. When I draw, I usually will generate one object and then I will create similar off of it like crazy. So anytime I want to draw a wall now, I don't initiate the wall command, choose the wall type, come over here and draw. I click on it, I hit create similar, and I begin to draw, okay? Okay, folks, that was a little longer than I had anticipated, but I feel like I say that a lot. But I just want you to do well in these assignments. So this is a good way to create sloped ceilings, which you'll have to do on the main level. In the basement level, of course, your ceilings will all be flat, okay? So you will create ceilings in the basement level, but these will all be flat. But you know how to do those. So good luck on your assignments. Thanks, everybody.